It isn't always easy to change your mind, especially when your opinions are based on emotion and not fact. But I'm encouraged to see that some people are beginning to change their mind about the situation in the Middle East, despite the relentless anti-Israel coverage we're constantly force-fed by the Western media. Because when people take the trouble to look at the facts, they quickly realize that the Palestinian cause is insultingly bogus and phony, that the terrorist Palestinian leadership are playing the free world like a Stradivarius, and that the whole problem could be solved peacefully and prosperously for everyone involved tomorrow if only they would stop murdering people and let it happen. People also realise when they look at the facts that for all the talk of an apartheid state in Israel, the only apartheid you'll find in the Middle East is in Arab countries who won't allow their Palestinians to integrate, denying them the most basic of human rights and condemning them to generations of misery and resentment because they need the refugee camps to remain permanently, festering like open sores, to gain sympathy from the gullible West and to con millions of good-hearted people here into supporting their religious war of hatred against Jews, all Jews. Indeed, the Hamas Charter specifically calls for the killing of all Jews, just in case anyone was in any doubt. However, although the tide of truth is beginning to turn, many people are still very critical of Israel's failure to abide by United Nations resolutions, especially to do with human rights. And yes, on the surface that seems a legitimate concern, assuming of course that a UN resolution is actually worth the paper it's written on. Let's pretend for the moment that it is, just for fun. Yes, that's a real puzzle, isn't it? Why would the Israelis ignore dozens of resolutions forced through by a cartel of anti-Semitic Bronze Age barbarians who would destroy their country and everyone in it, including women and children, given half a chance? Beats me. I guess they must be fascists. If you're one of the people who still thinks like this, let me try and explain to you why they do it, in case you are just too stubborn or too dense to figure it out for yourself. The United Nations, as it stands today, is an embarrassing disgrace and an insult to humanity. Whatever moral authority it may once have had has been squandered. Its political corruption is matched only by its incompetence. Just ask the people of Syria. I wouldn't trust the United Nations to run a lemonade stand without thousands of people being needlessly killed. Among its many failings, the United Nations encourages Islamic religious hatred and racism to dress itself up in the language of human rights, repeatedly allowing its Human Rights Council to be steamrolled in this regard by a cartel of 57 mainly dictatorships and theocracies known as the Organization of Islamic something or other. They keep changing it and I can't be bothered to keep up. I don't really care what they call themselves. It's enough to know what they are, and that's brutal, barbaric Islamic hellholes that nobody in their right mind would choose to live in, and whose own human rights records are not only worse than Israel's, but immeasurably worse. Countries like Iran, where they execute children. Sudan, where they practice slavery and casual genocide. Pakistan, which is supposed to be a democracy, but which is actually a dictatorship of religious ignorance, violence and fear, and where every year 1,000 women are murdered by members of their own family. And of course, Saudi Arabia, the black hole of Islamic barbarism, the world's leading source of terrorist funding, and the absolute moral anus of the universe. These are some of the countries behind the blizzard of resolutions directed at Israel. Countries that belong on the high moral ground the way a rattlesnake belongs in a lunchbox. Countries united by a virulent religious hatred of Jews for being Jews. These are the loudest voices at the United Nations, so of course the Israelis ignore them. It would be suicidal not to. When it comes to Israel, the United Nations is a crooked court with a jury full of hanging judges, and it doesn't get any more corrupt than that. And frankly, I'm baffled as to why the Americans still tolerate this disgusting travesty on their soil and pay all its bills. They should kick it out of the country and tell it to relocate to Tehran or Islamabad, where the Organization of Islamic Fascists can go ahead and pass all the fancy resolutions they like, all written out in the most beautiful Arabic, and then promptly shove them where the sun don't shine. In attacking Israel over and over, while ignoring the real human rights violators, not only the Islamic barbarians, but the North Koreas and the Burmas of this world, the United Nations has shown itself to be nakedly partisan and to be effectively an enemy of Israel. And as I see it, unless you're an idiot, or a Western liberal, you don't take orders from your enemies. Peace, if you like.